Array list methods. So in this unit, what we're going to do is we're going to look at calling and the applications of array list methods, and these are going to be a little bit different than the array elements that can be accessed and modified directly. An array list requires a method to be able to use or to be used to access and modify those elements. So in thinking about those two things, let's think of some questions regarding when you might use one or the other, what the pros and cons would be. So when might you choose to use an array list over an array? So think about that. What are some of the differences between an array and an array list? Why do you need an import statement to use the array list? And describe how you would add elements to an array list. So let's compare the two. So here we have our static arrays, and these are elements that can be accessed directly. It starts at index 0, and the elements can be modified directly, such as reassigning the value to reassigning a value to an assisting array element. So for example, here, we're reassigning the index 0 to a new value 52. And once a Java static array is dimensionalized, then it has a fixed number that cannot be changed. An array list contains objects. It also starts at 0, and they have a dynamic dimension, and they need to be, elements need to be added or removed as needed, and objects always must be accessed by manipulating its methods. So you have already seen the add and the size method, so to get the size of the list and add. Additional methods are covered in the AP exam, and this would be things like add, get, set, remove, and we're going to actually be talking about these in 7.2 and 7.3. If you want to look at the exam reference sheet, remember you get this on the AP exam, then you can just click on here and it'll take you to the whole reference sheet. So the size method returns the number of items in that array. And the array, remember, starts out empty with the size of 0. So the default is 0. With arrays, you use the length fields to get the number of items in the array. But with an array list, you use size. So here's length and size. And I actually think I did that wrong in an example going up, but we'll look. You can add values to an array list by using the method add and whatever object you're adding, which will add the object to the end of the list. So let's take a look at this point, pause the video and take a look at adding to, it's not going to let me go. Take a look at 7.2 and see if you could add that. A little note about integer array list. When adding integer array objects to an array list, you can use the integer constructor like add new integer 5. This is just giving you a little bit more example about what can be done with different versions of Java. So if you're having some problems, it could be the Java version. I believe that in Broomstone we're using Java version 8, and I think there's 14 or 18 in the world, just letting you know. You can put any kind of objects into an array list. And so at this point, go ahead and try to add student and student contact information, ID number, I believe it's ID number, email, to an add. All right, so the add method is an overloaded method, and there's actually two different kinds of add methods in the array list. So we've seen the add, which will add the object to the end of the list. There's also the add object, and this adds the object at whatever index location you want, but it moves any existing values over one, so it shifts it over to the next higher level. So at this point, go ahead and look at that by doing activity 7.2.3. And then let's try the following Replit challenge. So in this one, we're going to make a number list and we want to write a short program. So just try to see if you can get this on your own. This is one of those free response questions. Can you write a short program using a for loop to create an array list called multiples of 3 of the first 100 multiples of 3 starting at 0? And then when it's completed, the computer should print the contents of that array list. So pause right now and see if on Replit, if you can create this free response question. All right, so now that you've paused and you've tried it yourself, here we have the array list. We're going to import. We have our method. We have our array list, integer method, multiples of 3. And we've got our new array list. And we're saying we're going to start at 0, going as long as we're going to keep traversing or going through iterating, and as long as I is less than 100, and then we're going to increase each time multiples of 3, and then we're going to take 3 times the I. You can also, so let's talk about removing. So you can remove values from an array list by using the method remove, and then whatever the index location. And this removes the item at a given index from the list and then moves all of the other items over in the underlying array to decrease the size of the list length by 1. So to see this in action, try 7.2.4. The remove int index method will remove the object at the index and shift left any of the values that were left over, so any values to the right, and it does not remove the object that matches the integer value given. You can get the object at the index using object equals and then whatever your list name or set, and then whatever your list name happens to be .get, and then whatever index location you want. You can set the object at the index using the list name .set. So you can get and you can set. Again, we index and then whatever object you're going to set in there. The get and set are used to change and retrieve elements after you add and remove them from an array list. So an array list uses the getters and setters method instead of using the square brackets of the index. So you can see a little bit of a difference. At this point, go ahead and try unit 7.2.5, the list get set. All of these methods are including on the AP a Java quick reference sheet that you will receive during the exam. So I keep trying to hand this to you guys. Please start looking at it because you don't need to memorize them. And so I think some of you guys are getting frustrated. You don't need to memorize them. Instead, look at that quick reference sheet to figure out how that reference sheet can help you and prevent you from memorizing and just knowing that it's there. It's not going to replace everything, but it's going to give you quite an advantage if you know how to use it properly. So here we have arrays versus array list. We have our static arrays. We're going to use this when we want to store several items of the same type. So this is going back to that question, when do we want to use arrays and array lists? So we're going to use this one when we want to store several items of the same type, and you know how many items will be in that list, and it's not going to change in the order or the number. So here we have a list of integer high scores. An array list, you're going to use this when you want to store several items of the same type and you don't know how many items you're going to need in the list, or when you want to remove items from the list or add items when the program is running, like a grocery list. Or here we have our high score list and we're going to add high score, we're going to be able to add. So here's again arrays versus array list. So here we have our operation. If we want the length and size, we're going to do the array length. Whereas an array list, we want the list size. If we want to access and get the information, we're going to use value equals array index, and here we use the get. And if we want to modify, we're going to array index, set the value, whereas here we're going to set the list and then use the set. Note that in your array list, methods to add and remove do not have a simple equivalent in arrays because they don't actually change the size of the underlying array and move elements over. So, quick summary your int size returns the number of elements in a list. Your Boolean add appends objects to the end of the list and returns it true. Your void add inserts objects at position 0, index and size, moving all of the elements of the position index and higher to the right, so it shifts everything over. Remove removes the element at the position index, and then moving all of the other elements index +1 and higher to the left, so it subtracts 1, so it shifts them again. The get returns the element at that object, and the set replaces, and that's key replaces. So with the partner, go ahead and work through that programming challenge 7.2.7 on CSAwesome, which is also called Runestone. It's at the very ends. And make sure that you do lesson 7.2. And if you need additional resources, here are the links to the daily videos, 1, 2, and 3 from College Board. I couldn't think of it, from the AP Classroom. I couldn't think of it for a second. All right, good luck.